Peter stood still in the cold, the rain falling down as he cried, knowing that this was all his fault. She died for nothing. If only Peter could have stopped Norman earlier, or just listened to Strange, maybe he wouldn't be in this predicament. With Lizard, Electro, and Green Goblin threats to the city, Peter thought that he couldn't keep doing this. He was only one person. Peter was about to punch the screen as J. Jonah Jameson started ranting about Spider-Man before a noise of a glider could be heard. Parker's spider sense went off and turned around. The man called Peter's name. As Parker turned around, he saw someone he didn't know. Peter asked who he was, and the man said that his name was Harry. Osborn apologized. He told Peter that he was at the center when it happened. He was transported here from another dimension and knew that he needed to find him. Peter told Harry whoever he is, he can't help him anymore. Anyone for that matter, as Aunt May had been killed. Harry put his head down but told Peter that he knew him. Harry explained that his father was killed when he fought with Spider-Man in his own universe. Peter was shocked by this revelation. Parker asked who his father was, and Harry said his name was Norman. This hit Parker hard. He asked Harry to repeat it. Harry told him his name again, that he was Norman Osborn. Everything was replying in Peter's head. He remembered when Osborn mentioned his son and his company. Peter asked the guy who runs Oscorp in your universe, and Harry's face dropped as Peter knew of his father. At Ned's house, Ned was given a special sling ring from Peter that were originally given to him by Doctor Strange. After MJ realized something was wrong, she knew that she needed to find Peter. Ned and MJ used the sling ring, asking where Peter Parker was. The portal opened, but it wasn't their Peter that they were looking for. Another Spider-Man would come out of the portal, and it was revealed to be none other than Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. After convincing Ned and MJ that he was Spider-Man of another world, this version of Parker explained how he was transported here from another dimension that looked just like this version. He saw another version of Spider-Man but had no luck in finding him. When Ned opened the next portal, another version of Peter Parker emerged. It was none other than Maguire's Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire's Peter would fight briefly with his alternate counterpart before they both realized that they were on the same side of things. Both Peters went with MJ and Ned to meet with the original Peter Parker of the MCU. MJ and Ned would make it in time to see Peter, but he was with someone. Peter explained how Harry's father had killed his Aunt May. Peter dropped to the ground in tears. Harry said I'm sorry as MJ and Ned ran to Peter's aid. Harry told them that he's a friend of Peter's and that he doesn't mean any harm. Peter looked up at Harry and told him that he was going to send him home with the rest of them. Harry was still shocked that somehow his father was still alive. Osborn told Peter not to do it as MJ took the box away from Peter before he could grab it. Peter told MJ to give it back to him as he was done with everything. There wasn't anything left fighting for. Peter Parker and Spider-Man lost. Harry looked up to see two shadows stalking them. He grabbed a pumpkin bomb, but MJ told him not to do anything as they were friends. Peter looked up and told them to stop as both Peters jumped and flipped their way towards them. Andrew's Peter said, sorry, I know what you're going through, and Tom's Peter told him he doesn't know what he has lost and that he's tired of hearing it. He said that he was going to send them all home. He's done. Harry stood still before the other figure in the shadow was revealed. Out came Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker from the shadows. Maguire's Peter analyzed the situation. He looked and couldn't believe his eyes. He saw Harry. Maguire's Peter still gave a speech, with great power must come great responsibility. Tom's Peter then realized that maybe fate had brought them together and that he needed to end this because it was his responsibility to do so. Maguire's Peter then yelled Harry's name as tears came down his eyes. Harry smiled at him and the two Spider-Men dropped to meet the group. Peter with flashbacks when Harry died in his arms. He couldn't believe that his best friend was standing next to him once again. Harry walked up to Peter, making fun of him that he looked older. Harry asked how he was doing, where Peter replied that he still goes around and that he was doing good. Harry smiled, where Peter replied how he got here. Harry explained that he was getting ready to help him fight Venom and Sandman, but after he was getting his gear, he vanished and came to this world. After that, he found himself in the middle of New York City looking for answers answers, where he came across this new version of Peter. Harry asked where he came from, and Peter had a flashback of where he was on that day when he vanished. Peter knew where he was, and he had told Harry that he was fighting Vulture, and that he had just disappeared into this alternate dimension. After that, a portal opened, where Peter met with this world's MJ and Ned. Harry was shocked to hear it. After all, Peter must have been coming from a different time, as he was much older than he was, at least 8 years older. Andrew's Peter then asked what the plan was and how they were going to stop the villains. Just like our original MCU timeline, Tom's Peter told them that they could still cure Electro, Green Goblin, and Sandman if they worked together. They could fix them and send them home. Harry asked if his father was still alive, where Tom's Peter replied that he is indeed still out there. Maguire's Peter added that Norman was very dangerous, and that if Harry were to confront him, he might not be able to see the light as the Goblin Serum is mostly in control. Harry asked the three Spider-Man if he can tag along, as he needed to confront his father. Tom's Peter agreed, as they will fight in May's honor, but they have unfinished business with Osborn. Harry knew that this was his chance to finally confront his father. He had never had the opportunity to do so, but now, like Peter said, it was as if fate had brought them all together today. The group started creating cures for each villain. As they were creating cures, Harry asks Maguire's Peter what happened to him in the future, as this version of Peter is older. Tobey's Peter feels the urge to tell Harry about the impending doom Venom will bring to him. Knowing that it's his responsibility to know what will happen to him, Peter wants to tell Harry, but fears of his reaction. Peter is about to reveal Harry's dark future until Tom's Peter shouts that they have made all the cures. Andrew's Peter puts his mask on and asks Maguire's Spider-Man if that's all he has to bring. Harry looks at Peter and takes his mask out of his pocket, getting ready in his Spider-Man costume. The group leave and MJ and Ned stay at the laboratory for safety. The three Spider-Men, and now along with Harry Osborn, start luring the villains to the Statue of Liberty, placing the cures on different floors to spread them out. Tom's Peter would eventually talk to the city, saying that it was all his fault for sending the villains and that he would end this now, and that he would put things right. The three Spider-Man and Harry Osborn finish placing the cures, but are met with Electro. Electro tells the group of heroes that they can't take this away from him, and that he will become a god with all of the power in this universe. The Lizard appears with Sandman, who tells Peter that they won't be going home, and that he will be killed. The showdown begins. Harry knows he's never faced any villains before, but decides to fight. Maguire's Peter tells Harry not to inflict much damage, as doing so could harm them. They just want to send them back home and cure them. Harry nods his head, grabbing pumpkin bombs from his glider, throwing them at the Lizard. The Spider-Man charge the villains, fighting each one at a time like in the original universe. Harry and Maguire's Peter would team up, while Ned and MJ use the sling ring to open a portal to the Statue of Liberty, letting Strange out of the portal. Kurt and Sandman get cured, and the team make their way to stop Electro. Taking Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrews, it's revealed to be Otto Octavius. Harry yells at Otto before Otto betrays Electro. Everyone is confused by this, but Strange comes in and tells them that he was going to send everyone back before a laugh could be heard in the distance. Everyone stood still in silence, including Harry, who could hear his father's laugh that sounded just like when he attacked at the expo all those years ago. Doctor Strange tries using the box to send everyone back before Green Goblin laughs, taking the box with a pumpkin bomb in it before Otto and Doctor Strange attack Green Goblin. Goblin gets the box taken away from him, but he's already implanted that pumpkin bomb. It explodes everywhere. MJ screams as she loses her balance. She falls off of the platform. Tom's Peter tries to save MJ, but is caught by Green Goblin. Like our original universe, Andrew's Peter would redeem himself by catching MJ. While Green Goblin grabbed Peter, Goblin turned his head to see someone else hit him with his glider. Harry knocked Norman off of his glider to the Captain America shield down below. Norman flew, smashing his back off of the shield. He tried to get back up, but he stayed down. Harry finally saw his father after all those years. Harry dropped the glider down before walking towards him. Harry said "Dad," but Norman turned his head and started attacking Harry viciously. Harry tried dodging the attacks and began to get into close quarters combat with his father. Green Goblin laughed, saying that Norman's son was a disappointment and that he only came here to get more disapproval. Harry cried as he punched his father again and again. Norman said, "Look at you. You're weak. You've always been weak until you can take control. Just look at your face." Harry had enough as Norman and Harry got into an arm lock. Harry had a pumpkin bomb in his right hand, and Norman looked, screaming no as Harry detonated the bomb. The two flew backwards. Tom's Peter walked towards the two. Harry could see Peter picking up his glider where he yelled no, thinking he was going to kill his father. Maguire's Peter came in to save Norman. Tom's Peter screamed before he stopped what he was doing. Harry saw this and couldn't believe that Peter had saved his father. The goblin wasn't done yet and was about to stab Peter before Harry called for his glider, hitting Norman back while Andrew's Spider-Man used his webs around Norman. Injecting the cure, Norman fell to the ground, defeated, as Harry looked down at him. The three Spider-Men turned their attention to Doctor Strange, who was having a hard time shutting the spell down. More Spider-Man villains were leaking into their universe, and the three went to help Strange, where Norman asked his son what had happened. Harry asked what happened to him. He wanted to know all of the answers, where he was, and why he became the Goblin. Norman cried, and he was proud that Harry became the man that he couldn't be. Norman felt bad for his son, as he almost went down the same path as him. Harry revealed that he died by killing himself with his own glider. He revealed to his father that he was hell-bent on revenge to kill Spider-Man, and then he learned the truth. Norman was shocked to hear his fate, and how Spider-Man would eventually kill him for what he had done. Norman told his son that he was so sorry, and that he never was the father he should have been, and that he was greedy. Harry extended his hand out to his father, who was completely broken from everything. Harry said that he wishes things were different, but he was glad that they were able to cure him from the Green Goblin. Norman embraced his son for one last time. Norman knew that what he became had finally been finished. Maguire's Peter looked on as he saw Norman and Harry embracing one another. After all that, Harry was able to make things right with his father and see him just one more time. Tom's Peter asked Strange what their next course of action would be. Strange didn't know what to do, but Tom's Peter said that, what if everyone forgets that he's Spider-Man, even MJ and Ned? Strange agreed that this could work, and it would stop the villains from getting through the portals. What if everyone stopped knowing that Peter Parker was Spider-Man? How would this unfold? Tom's Peter would talk it over with Maguire's Peter and Andrew's after the two shared their moments with Ock and Electro. Maguire's Peter agreed, but told Tom's Peter that he would be sacrificing everything for the greater good, and that sometimes he needs to give up the things he wants the most, as Spider-Man, and even his dreams, for the greater good, because with great power comes great responsibility. Tom's Peter agreed as he said goodbye to the two Spider-Men. Andrew's Peter told Maguire's Spider-Man that he wanted to see how Max was doing and embraced Maguire's Peter. Peter then said goodbye as he walked towards Harry. Harry left his father, who was broken, on the ground, defeated. Harry smiled, knowing that whatever happens next, he was happy with his life and the choices he made to get to where he was. Parker told him that he will miss him and that he was his best friend. Before the spell started happening, Peter started fading away and told Harry, whatever battle we have raging inside us, we always have a choice, and you taught me that. Tom's Peter had reset everyone's minds, while Strange started sending everyone back to their universe and fixing everything. Harry thanked Peter for helping him, and Peter smiled, watching his friend fade away one last time. Everyone had been sent back to their home universes as if nothing had ever happened. Harry, on the other hand, had remembered everything that happened to him. He looked around to see that the TV was still playing, while the TV broadcaster told everyone that Spider-Man was fighting Venom, and that it was hard to believe what was happening as they didn't think Spider-Man could take any more hits from Sandman. Harry saw that his glider was still with him, and he decided to help Peter. Sandman was ready to kill him before before a pumpkin bomb went off, blowing up the Sandman. With his glider slowly rising, Peter saw his friend come to the rescue. Harry extended his hand out as Peter took it. The two watched as Venom and Sandman were charging them. Back in the MCU, Peter would go to the coffee shop watching as Ned and MJ forgot who Peter was. But Parker was happy that he was able to save everyone, including Spider-Man. Peter would do one final swing with his bright blue and red suit. While in the Raimiverse, events would unfold differently due to No Way Home. As the original events were unfolding properly, Venom used a symbiote tendril, throwing Harry off his glider. Harry smashed his face off of a metal bar, falling to the ground, while Peter was tied up with the symbiote web. Harry watched as Venom screamed at Spider-Man. Venom used Harry's glider, launching it forward, ready to kill Parker, before Harry took a pumpkin bomb blade, cutting the symbiote ties in the nick of time. Before Venom could stab Peter, while Harry ran, using the metal bars, slamming them together, getting rid of the symbiote. Harry and Peter would defeat Venom in an alternate branched reality. Because of the No Way Home events, Harry would survive in another universe, where in the original universe it would still continue. But now, where in his original universe he would still die, with his version of Peter coming back with his family. And that is going to be it for this long-awaited Marvel's What If. I had a lot of people wanting me to do this fanfiction, where Harry Osborn's New Goblin would be one of the villains that was transported from the Raimiverse to the MCU timeline. Seeing that it could have happened, I thought I wanted to have him live in another universe, because I believe when the villains came back to their times, they branched off into an alternate reality where they lived. That's why I decided to add an extension to this Marvel's What If, where Harry would live in Spider-Man 3. What is your thoughts on this What If? And if you guys did enjoy, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. And just starting at $1 a month, you will be able to see exclusive content on my Patreon. So if you want to see more videos like this one that you just saw, make sure you go support the Patreon on there, as I will be doing a ton of exclusive content and showing you so much. But anyways, take care, and I'll see you in the next Marvel's What If.